Welcome to the Firebelly Social Show. We're focused on talking to food and beverage brands that are on a mission to make the world better.
Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of the Firebelly Social Show, where we speak to CEOs and leaders of mission-driven organizations, specifically in the food and beverage space. And I'm your host, Duncan. Sometimes I forget to introduce myself, so I'm making it a point. I'm Duncan, and I have with me Arnell, who goes by the last name Mitchell, Arnell Mitchell. She is a traveler, a wanderer, a digital nomad, and a yogi, among so many other things. Glad to have you on, Arnell. And I'm so excited about our special guest, who I'm going to introduce in a second. First, a couple of sponsor messages. Rise25, who connect businesses with other businesses using podcasts, and Firebelly, we're a social media marketing agency working in the food and beverage sector, helping them get awareness, engagement, and more. All right, with no further ado, we got Jamba Dunn. He is the founder and CEO of Boulder-based Rowdy Mermaid, a functional wellness beverage brand. And they've got two different product lines. I'm going to see if I can do this right. Kombucha and sparkling tonics with adaptogens. And also made out of reishi mushrooms for immunity. They're nationally distributed. You can find them at Whole Foods, Sprouts, a bunch of other places, and of course online. So we're so excited to have him. After leaving corporate life behind, Jamba founded the company in 2013 to dive into two of his favorite things in the world: academic research and the art of fermentation. And this, and at the request of his young daughter, for a kombucha less sweet and less vinegary, Jamba the man developed a new process for brewing a thousands-of-year-old beverage, and his rambunctious, water-splashing daughter is also the inspiration for the name. He holds degrees from UC Berkeley, Naropa University, and has a PhD in philosophy in Switzerland. I mean, Arnell, I think he's officially probably the wisest and most educated person we've ever had on the show. So, hey, Jamba, welcome, my man. Welcome.
Thank you. That's a great introduction. I love it. Thank you guys so much. Happy to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you here. And I guess there's so much stuff we can talk about. But let's start at the very beginning. I almost did that in my Julie Andrews voice right now. But, let's start at the beginning. What made you get into kombucha?
Oh, that's a really good question. So back at the beginning, it's even before I founded the company in 2013. In 2011, I was a full-time employee at Rosetta Stone, building language learning video games for children, and having a pretty good time of it, but also very, very stressed out. And my wife gave me a home brewing kit for beer for Christmas. And I got someone to help me teach me how to make beer. And because my personality is that once I get into something, I go as deep as possible with it, I started brewing lots and lots of beer. And in fact, I was brewing so much beer, and I was only obsessed with trying to make the best possible recipes. And when something didn't come out exactly right, I'd want to get rid of it as soon as possible so I could start remaking the recipe again. And, as the story goes, I was here in Boulder, I was making beer in my garage and having a pretty good time of it. And because we couldn't drink enough of beer. In fact, I wasn't actually drinking a ton of beer at the time. I was just obsessed with the process. I started holding yard sales and giving away free beer at the yard sales. So we became very popular with our neighbors and some of the college kids around. I don't suggest you do this at home, but that's one way to quickly get rid of 5 gallons of beer, is to just invite people over. And so we would get rid of beer. I would wash out the equipment. I'd go back into my garage and I would tweak the recipe and start making a new one. And it was in the middle of one of those processes where I was making beer, where my daughter came in who was 3 at the time, and asked if she could have some of what I was making, and I told her no, it's for adults. And then she asked if I could make something for her. And so, I thought, well, yeah, of course. Like, what kind of a parent am I, right? I'm just brewing and drinking beer all day long and stressing out at work. Not a good recipe. So I figured what could be easier than to make her some kombucha. I had brewed a little bit of kombucha. We had roommates. We were living in Virginia with Rosetta Stone. They made kombucha. We had friends who made kombucha. And so it seemed pretty easy. We'll make some kombucha. So I went online. I found a recipe. I made some kombucha and I gave it to her. And she loved it. But she loved it with a sort of exuberance that was kind of like, set me back for a moment. And then every day after I gave it to her, she would show up downstairs at the little closet where I was making kombucha with her little cup and asking me for more. And I thought, well, this is cute, but also like a little odd, like how much she was into it. And after drinking kombucha, she would get very hyper. I mean, kids are hyper anyway, but she was like, whoo, bouncing off the walls, jumping on things, coming back, drinking more. And, I thought it was cute at first, but then something else just clicked, like, maybe this is not like as cute as I'm thinking it is. Like, maybe I need to understand what I'm making here. So, in 2011, when you want to ask questions about kombucha, where do you go? You go to the internet, but at that time, less than 5% of the American population even knew what kombucha was, and so it wasn't like you could find answers out there. You could find speculations here and there and chat rooms, but you couldn't find the actual science. There were only a couple of books out about kombucha at the time, and I bought and read those. And I, with my research background, realized that was kind of garbage. And so I did what any scholar would do. I hired someone smarter than myself, a biochemist, and I said, "Hey, what am I making here? And like, what exactly is in here?" And what he did was he tested my kombuchas, and he went to the store and he bought everything on the shelf and he tested those. And then we had sort of a revelation. We didn't realize that what I was brewing was very high alcohol, very high sugar, very high caffeine. It also had fluoride and some other things in there that we didn't necessarily want, and something that for sure I didn't want to give to my 3-year-old daughter. And so I began the process of trying to clean up my kombucha and trying to figure out how to make it with less sugar, less alcohol, less fluoride, and less of all the things that we didn't want in there. And about a year later, my daughter, when I'd given up beer brewing and now we was only doing kombucha and brewing a lot more of it at a time. I'd given up 5 gallons, and now here I was making anywhere between 100 and 200 gallons at a time, and still giving it away, by the way, at yard sales, because I still needed to get rid of the tanks, and anything that was left, at night, I would just run a hose out into the drain and drain it all out and clean the equipment and start all over. But about a year into it, my daughter asked me if, because we have big gardens at our house and we do a lot of teas and everything, she asked me if I could make one using her favorite flowers and herbs from the garden. And she had brought all those things in that she likes. And so I said, yeah, right. Like, absolutely, honey. That sounds like a great idea. And then I turned to the scientist that I had hired, and he said, absolutely not. Like, it has to be made with tea. You can't do it with herbs. And so I said, well, let's make that our project. We're going to make an herb-based kombucha using, fermenting flowers and botanicals. and we're going to make it low alcohol and low sugar and fluoride free and all those things. And that's going to be our mission. And that's what set me on this path.
That's amazing. That is a key problem with a lot of the kombucha, man. It tastes great, but there's so much sugar in it. So much sugar in it.
Yeah. I mean, the companies have changed a lot. I'd say everyone sort of came down in acidity and in sugar. And, there are still companies struggling with alcohol. Of course, we see that in the news all the time. But because we sort of attacked this problem as a research problem first, and not a flavoring problem or a scalability problem like most kombucha companies face when they're just getting started, we sort of were able to get a handle on the situation pretty quickly. And a few years ago, filed for a patent for our process for keeping the alcohol low. And we feel like we have a pretty special product that's very different from what's on shelf.
Love it. And there's so many. I love that research. It's a research problem, not a flavor problem, which kind of nicely segues into one of the phrases that you use, and it's a practice of your organization and yourself: science-based innovation. Talk a little bit about that. That's a fascinating term.
Yeah. So we, because I did start with when I was at Rosetta Stone and I was, growing and drinking teas and all these types of things, I was always making teas using herbs and botanicals for their functions, right? I believe in different flowers for different purposes and roots and mushrooms, to keep myself healthy. And I've done enough research to understand why and how these things work in the body. And so what we brought to the kombucha space was bringing all those botanicals so that our kombucha wasn't, excuse me that I'm stumbling over this, but there's like a lot of different levels to this. If we go back to 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15, all kombuchas were the same. I mean, there might have been other kombuchas that I don't know about, but everyone was just making a kombucha that had living probiotics in it, and then they were making it in different flavors. We never really fully bought into the belief that the probiotics in kombucha alone were a reason to call it a functional beverage, because some of our research putting those same probiotics into acids as low as the stomach produces showed that almost nothing passes through into the digestion system. And so we wanted to make kombucha that has probiotics because they do other things as well. But our real focus was in making kombucha that is infused with botanicals for the different reasons and the different holistic purposes that those botanicals bring. Mm-hmm. And we did a lot of research into those botanicals and ended up setting up a laboratory here at Rowdy and hiring research scientists to help us understand how these are going to not only taste, but also how they're going to help the body. And we don't make claims about it, but we have done a vast amount of research. I mean, like I said, we've got a couple of patents filed now on how we make kombucha. And so we started pointing that sort of the laboratory at different areas, right? We would get teas that were organic from certain regions, and we run them through the laboratory and test everything in them and find out that a lot of teas had spray over on them from pesticides. Or we would get teas and we would test them and find out that they were sort of off the charts for different chemicals that we don't necessarily want in the finished product. And so it kind of started helping us to understand the entire process. Not just what we're making here, but who are the ingredient suppliers? Where are those ingredients coming from? And then later on in 2018, when we took capital for the first time, it also helped us to clean up the supply chain, not just buy the cheapest thing because that's the only product that we could sort of make money off of, but really going for the best products and then going out to the farms themselves and looking at the conditions at the farms to make sure that they were humane, and trying to really clean up the entire process from beginning to end, and then eventually even brewing or raising our own probiotics here in-house, and being one of the only companies to use organic yeasts, for instance, in our process. So those are some of the ways that we've been using the scientific approach.
That's fascinating. And I think I read that you all work exclusively with Tulia, which I hadn't heard. I don't know if I said that right, but I hadn't heard of them before. And it's a fascinating company.
Fast growing, based here in Denver. They have farms in Bangladesh, regenerative organic tea farms, mostly women owned and operated. There's a lot to say about it. A lot of the money from purchasing the tea goes back into the communities. And so, they have lots and lots of vendors, and some of them much bigger than us now. But the purchase of those teas has helped to build schools and medical centers and other types of things. And also reclaim the landscape that was all just arid desert land. They're now lush gardens.
I mean, and Bangladesh is one of those countries that, the beautiful place that you read all the wrong shit about that. They cover all the wrong stuff. And it's a lovely language. The people have been kind of ravaged, and, global geopolitics have kind of effed up a lot of that stuff. So love hearing that story. It's a great story. Hey man, what role does, I think there was an interesting quote from you, one of your favorite philosophers, on the role of passion. And I got two parts to the question. Briefly, the role of passion for you, but also maybe more importantly, as a guy who's, I'm guessing, 40, 38, how do you keep that passion going? Like, what do you do to nourish it?
So I don't know where to start with that. You calling me 38 years old. I love that. You're great. Keep it up.
It's baldness, now. What can I say?
Yeah, I turned 56 this year. But thank you for that. But I do drink a lot of kombucha.
I'm about to say, it's the kombucha.
Yeah, it keeps you young for sure. I mean, a lot of the things that we make here, are really good for the body. And I guess maybe I'm living proof, although I haven't shaven in it. So I don't know where you heard the quote about passion. Can I just ask that?
I think it was on a interview you did somewhere else. I think, is it Hegel? Is that how you say the philosopher's name?
Yeah. I don't often quote Hegel, but somewhere I must have. Nietzsche was mostly my man in philosophy. I will say that Nietzsche did propose this concept of brief habits, as he called. Brief habits are where, if, like I said earlier, you get into something, you get into it all the way, top to bottom. There is no other thing in your life except for that. And then at some point, you're out of that and you move on to the next thing. And I've sort of made that a way of life for myself, except for when it came to kombucha, I seem sort of here. I haven't gotten out of it. It hasn't. I'll say it's not been a brief habit, but it takes passion, right, to really get into something. And it really takes a belief that there's something there, right? Whether can find the element of it on the surface, or you just believe in something, whether it's brief habit, whether it's a hobby, whether it's a place, like we were talking with Arnell about different beautiful places. At some point, I feel like you've just got to take that leap, and you're going to make it what you want. And that's what I've always believed in. And so gardening for us was our big thing, my wife and I, for years and years. And whenever we would have a rental, we would always turn the yard into big gardens and grow food and everything, even though it wasn't our property, until, we had our own property and we could do that. And that's all we do. But I think that, passion comes in a lot of different flavors. There's that passion that gets you involved with something. And then there's that passion that is going to help you stay with that through all the ups and downs, almost like having children, right? So business in a lot of ways is a lot like having a child or having several children. And, you've got that passion that sort of buoys you through those times when it seems like nothing's ever going right. And so that's sort of how I've been approaching business, how I've been approaching kombucha, how I approach new flavors and ingredients and things that we pull in-house here. New innovation, we're always innovating. Yeah, there's no shortage of and everyone here, some people are way more passionate than I am about things. And, I have to take a back seat to it because I understand I just have to let them run with it, right?
I love it. And that's something let us compliment you on, is the layers of innovation that are just clearly part of your company. I wanted to ask about this shift that you all are going through from relying on social media marketing and doing more in person. That to me sounds so logical with sort of the where people are with their digital lives. And it's interesting to see the company take that step. And I was wondering if you could share a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a recent step for us. We have been really trying to rely on social media, numbers, likes, reviews, those types of things, to help build the business and build the top line of the business, or the top of funnel, as they say, right? Brand awareness, and then eventually funnels down into sales. There's just so much noise out there. What did they used to say? Maybe one of you knows better than I do, that a person has to see something, 7 times before it sort of catches their attention. What is that number today? It can't be 7, right? That's what people said 15, 20 years ago. I'm sure nowadays it's probably more like 20 times.
Yeah. And frequency has increased. I mean, because there's a lot of noise, as you said, right? There's such a little signal that even when you do have signal, it's drowned out by all the noise. So,
and how do those things affect us today? When you see something 7, 10, 20, 30 times, does that mean that you go to the store and you buy that thing? For me personally, if I see something too many times, I try to avoid it. That's my MO, but that's probably a lot to do with my background and everything. I in my inbox looks like a lot of stuff that I'm always trying to avoid. But for me, I don't feel that. I love social media for social media, and I love seeing other people's ads and their products and things, but it never for me has translated to me wanting to go to the store and pick it up. So I have to assume that there are other people that are very similar to me. So maybe instead of putting a lot of time and energy and resources behind making bigger, bolder, more beautiful ads and videos and multi-channel YouTube ads, all these types of things, maybe just focusing on a little bit more real life interactions where I think that's really the heart of so much. If you know the buyers, for instance, and know who they are and what they like and what they're looking for, it's much easier to sort of get on the ground floor with buyers for innovation, what they're thinking about for the next 12 to 24 months, and to really form these types of partnerships. And the same thing with our consumers as well. They'll tell us why they're shifting away from kombucha or what they're focusing on, and that helps us to build stronger relationships and bring that back to innovation. I don't get that from social media. Do you?
It's interesting. It's an interesting question. Yeah. Arnell?
Yeah. I feel like, of course, on social media, and I think especially for brands that have product in stores, it definitely can be a little bit unique, especially in your case when you mentioned, I don't personally always feel like because I see an ad on social media, I'm more likely to pick it up in store. And the play on social media is really, especially when we're talking about products in store, is really just that overall brand awareness, knowing what that brand is, knowing how it can help you. And so one of the things that you said that I absolutely love is talking about the benefits of kombucha and the natural, implications of how it can help your body. And there's really a huge market, especially on social media channels like Pinterest, where people are more likely to try new brands that they've never heard of before. They're more likely to plan for parties and plan for weddings and to buy those things in advance. And so I think on social media, it's really about, number one, being super authentic with, what is going on, especially important on Pinterest, making your ads not look like ads. And I can't really stress that enough, really making it fit into the feed and so that it feels natural and it doesn't feel annoying. As you mentioned before, it can definitely get that way, if a brand is not really well connected with the client.
It's interesting. I mean, the way I interpret what you said, Jamba, is like, I think there are people beginning to live in a post-social world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're seeing that for sure. And just in the last year or so, I think I started encountering a lot of that, and specifically with brands. There's a brand that recently, unfortunately, had troubles here in Boulder, a chocolate company, and the founder just told me a couple weeks ago that at one point last year, they had their Instagram account hacked and taken over, and the marketing department was up in arms, right? We got to get this back. It was held for ransom. And the CEO and founder said, no, I'm not going to pay it. And so the marketing department was like on edge about, oh boy, like what's this going to do with our followings and everything? And he just didn't pay it, and it took quite a while for him to get it back. And he said during that period, sales never changed at all. And so he started wondering, well, maybe we don't need this, right? maybe like let's try just like cutting way back on social media, and then realizing, yeah, it's not having any like effects at the end of the day with our velocities. And so so what do we need this for necessarily? Yes. And another question. Oh, yeah.
I know one of the things that we've been thinking a lot about is how the media is the message, or is the message the media, kind of the Marshall McLuhan stuff is, our sort of like extension of that is, is it the use of the knife or is it the knife itself, right? And so maybe our approach to it, I know for us, we did an experiment over the last 3 months, 30 videos in 30 days, all original. And it seemed like after a while, you can't really sell shit anymore. It's like, what are you going to say? How much are you going to sell? And so we just started like, it's a superhuman not superhuman, but a very human experience, and almost like we were building out characters on social. And maybe that's the piece that social is better at, is telling stories rather than selling. And maybe there's no correlation between the selling and the buying. And maybe people only, because I agree with you. There's a lot. I love going to the grocery store, and I also order a lot of stuff online. But when it comes to ordering, yeah, I'm influenced by social ordering online. When it comes to buying at the grocery store, I'm not super influenced by social. It's just me, and apparently maybe it's bald guys in their 50s, Arnav, maybe you're the future. We're the the cynical bastards here. So
it's interesting. Somebody presented here something to me recently here, which was maybe there's a difference between the brands that are born online and require the online because they're DTC, they're available for ordering online over Amazon, and so those brands that were born, say, out of like influencers, right, or what am I thinking? Like movie stars who get behind a brand and they put some money behind it, and then they put their face behind it, and the brands have been blowing up, and then they lead them all to Amazon or to their local store. There's a difference between those brands and the, IRL brands like ourselves, which were born before a lot of the social media ever occurred. And, we're really based on real life interactions. We had one of the first kombucha tap rooms in the world. Rowdy Mermaid did. We had a kombucha cart, we called it, at the farmers markets. We had lots of real life interactions. I used to talk at universities to biochemistry laboratories about kombucha and the biochemistry involved. And we had a lot of those sort of, real life touch points. So for us, I don't doubt that social media has had some impact on people understanding who we are as a brand and getting behind the story and all that. And maybe it's driven some sales, but it's not the same as, say, Chamberlain Coffee, which was purely influencer born, right? And it's all available online, and we're not. So big differences there. And so for a brand like ours, do we push to have an online presence, and do we push on all of the influencers to try to promote us? Or do we pull back a little bit? And that's sort of the new experiment. Is pulling back and seeing if there's an effect there, and trying to do other things like having myself and my leadership team going to in-person meetings and trying to just bring everything back to relationships. It's a question. I don't have the answer for it.
It's amazing, and I think we could go for another 30 minutes or an hour, and we'd love to actually have you back. But we should do a roundtable sometime, and maybe we'll talk to you about who we get on the roundtable. And you definitely bring a philosophical angle to things. I love it. This has been so great. Let's wrap up for today. How can people find you and the company?
Just go online. No, I'm just kidding. Wouldn't that have been the best?
Come on, Duncan.
Go to our Instagram. Well, we are online, but no, you can find us. We're a Whole Foods global brand. We're in every state with different stores. We're at Colorado. We're at Lucky Stores. We're at King Supers. We're in different Kroger divisions. So we are all over the place. Natural Grocers, we're natural. We're in all their stores. Sprouts, we're national with them. So you can find us all over. And like you said, we've got currently 2 product lines, our kombucha line in multiple flavors and functions. And then we released, as you mentioned at the top of the show, our sparkling tonics with adaptogens. We'll have the beta-glucans extracted from reishi mushrooms And now we just introduced another SKU there that actually has beta glucans from lion's mane mushroom. And we also have a brand new product that we're going to reveal next month when we go to Expo. So
awesome.
Be looking out for that.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
You guys.
Thank you, Jamba. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the Firebelly Social Show, where we hang out with leaders of mission-driven food and beverage brands. This has been your host, Duncan and Arnell, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Firebelly Social Show. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.